Hey everyone, today we're going to explore what life was like in ancient China, and trust me, it's interesting. Life back then wasn't just about getting through the day. Everything they did was connected to their beliefs in gods, spirits, and honoring their ancestors. These values shaped how they lived, worked, and even dressed. A long time ago, people lived in small villages like Banpo, where women played a big role in leading their communities and performing religious rituals. They believed that spirits and gods were always watching, so they tried to act respectfully all the time. Early homes were small, round, and partly underground, and people wore clothes made from animal skins. Their religion focused on the idea that everything in nature had a spirit. As these villages grew into towns and cities, the Xia dynasty became the first organized government in China. For a while, people thought the Xia was just a legend, but archaeologists have found some evidence suggesting it was real. Then came the Shang Dynasty, which gave us the first written records of ancient Chinese life. This was also when silk was discovered. According to legend, a goddess named Lais found out how to make silk when a cocoon fell into her tea. Silk became a luxury only nobles and royalty could afford, while most people wore hemp clothing. Women's outfits were long tunics tied at the waist, while men's were shorter and often paired with pants. During cold weather, they all wore padded hemp jackets for warmth. Mothers would sew tiger images onto their children's clothes to protect them from evil spirits, as tigers were considered powerful guardians. Over time, clothing became a way to show your social status. During the Sui dynasty, peasants were only allowed to wear blue or black, while the wealthy could wear colorful clothes. Society was divided into clear groups: rulers, nobles, merchants, and peasants. For most people, your status was fixed at birth, but education offered a way to move up, especially during the Han Dynasty. The government introduced exams that allowed literate men from lower classes to become officials. These exams were extremely tough, requiring people to memorize entire books. Daily life also reflected these class divisions. Taverns and pubs were popular places to relax, but they were divided by class. The wealthy had elegant venues with entertainment, while commoners went to simpler places. In the city of Chang'an during the Tang Dynasty, there was even a special area for the rich to enjoy high-class entertainment. These courtesans were skilled performers, not just companions, and were highly respected for their talents. People's appearances also showed their social status. Everyone kept their hair long because it was believed cutting it would disrespect their ancestors. Rich women used fancy pins made of gold or silver, while poorer women used simple materials. Tattoos were mostly seen as something only criminals or outcasts had, although a few people got them as art. Hygiene was very important too. Even though people didn't bathe often because they thought it could make them sick, they used perfumes and deodorants to stay fresh. Wealthy people even had servants to feed them so they wouldn't damage their long fingernails, which were a symbol of status. One of the most famous and painful traditions in ancient China was foot binding. It started during the Five Dynasties period and became popular after an emperor's consort danced with her feet bound to look like a crescent moon. The idea of tiny, delicate feet caught on, and girls as young as toddlers had their feet tightly wrapped, causing extreme pain. While it began with the upper class, it eventually spread to all levels of society, making everyday life and work very difficult for women. This practice lasted for centuries before it was finally banned in the early 1900s. And farming, food, and drink were central to daily life in ancient China. Rice was the most important crop, especially in the southern parts of the country, where it thrived in flooded fields. Farmers worked hard to build canals to keep the fields wet and grow more rice. Rice wasn't just food, it was also used to pay taxes. People ate rice at nearly every meal, and it was even turned into wine. Other grains like wheat were grown too, but they weren't as essential as rice. The Chinese diet was mostly vegetarian. Temples and monasteries encouraged plant-based eating, believing it led to better health and a longer life. Meat was eaten only on special occasions, and animals that were still useful, like egg-laying chickens, were rarely killed. Fish was a common dish served with rice and vegetables. Families used a pot called a ding to cook their meals. This three-legged pot sat over a fire and was great for slow-cooking food, so dinner was ready after a long day of work. Wealthy families had servants who prepared more elaborate meals, often using pans or even ovens. Tea was the most important drink, first made around 100 BCE using powdered leaves. People enjoyed tea for its medicinal benefits and as a refreshing drink. Over time, tea became a big part of Chinese culture, with ceremonies that showed respect and care for guests. One legend says tea was discovered by a ruler named Yan Dai, who realized its healing powers after a drop of tea saved him from poison. Homes in ancient China were the center of family life. Wealthy families lived in large wooden homes built around a courtyard with gardens. These homes had sleeping areas, kitchens, and a hall where the family ate and spent time together. Peasants lived in simpler homes, often small huts. Everyone in the family had a role, with women running the household and men working outside. Cats were the most popular pets because they kept mice away and were good companions. Dogs were kept too, but they were mainly used for protection or work. Storytelling was a common pastime. Folktales often taught lessons, and animals like pigs symbolized wealth and success. People also enjoyed playing games such as mahjong, checkers, and go. Outdoor sports like football, wrestling, and archery were popular, but swimming wasn't because of superstitions about water ghosts, called shui gui, who were thought to drown people. Religion was a big part of life. People believed in spirits, gods, and the power of ancestors. Homes had small shrines to honor family ancestors and local gods like the Tudi Gong. In the kitchen, families placed a picture of Zao Shen, the kitchen god, above the stove. Zao Shen was thought to protect the home and report on the family's behavior to other gods. On New Year's Eve, families offered him food and burned his picture to send his report to heaven, smearing honey on his mouth to ensure he only gave good news. The next day they would hang up a new picture of him for the year ahead. Festivals and rituals showed how much people respected the spirit world. During the Ghost Festival and Tomb Sweeping Day, people honored their ancestors by cleaning graves and leaving gifts. They believed neglecting these duties could bring bad luck. Gods and goddesses like Shangti, the god of creation, and Guanyin, the goddess of compassion, were deeply respected. The Double Seventh Festival celebrated love and weaving skills, inspired by a legend about two star-crossed lovers. These traditions and beliefs connected the people's spiritual lives to their everyday actions, creating a society that balanced faith and daily living. And in ancient China, education was something only boys, particularly from wealthy families, could access. Girls were expected to stay home and learn skills for managing households and raising children. Young boys often helped with chores at home before being sent to school as teenagers, but this was mainly an option for upper-class families. The philosopher Confucius had a major impact on education. He taught young men to live virtuous and meaningful lives, guided by 5 key principles. Li, which focused on proper behavior and respect for others. Ren, meaning kindness and compassion. Sin, emphasizing loyalty. Yi, which stood for honesty. And Ji, understanding right from wrong. These virtues formed the foundation of education, and students were expected to memorize and live by them. Early students wrote on wooden sticks or scrolls until paper was invented in 105 BCE. During the Tang Dynasty, woodblock printing made it easier to produce books, which were then used in schools. Students studied texts like the 5 Classics and the 4 Books, many of which were based on Confucian teachings. Medicine, like education, was dominated by men because it required the ability to read medical texts. Women in rural areas sometimes worked as herbalists, but formal medical roles were rare for them. Early Chinese medicine relied heavily on spiritual practices. Shamans treated illnesses by using herbal remedies and rituals, believing sickness was caused by evil spirits. When Buddhism arrived, healthcare practices began to change. Buddhist monasteries opened centers called Fields of Compassion, which served as hospitals, orphanages, and retirement homes. Under Emperor Taizong during the Tang Dynasty, medical schools were established, and doctors had to pass rigorous exams to practice medicine. These doctors followed strict ethical guidelines and focused on practical treatments rather than spiritual rituals. A long and healthy life was highly valued in Chinese culture. Doctors, priests, and monks often recommended vegetarian diets, believing that avoiding meat promoted balance and harmony. While meat was consumed during festivals and sacrifices, it was generally discouraged by health experts. And festivals were an important part of life in ancient China, bringing communities together and honoring traditions. These celebrations ranged from small local events to major national holidays. Some were dedicated to ancestors, while others marked seasonal changes or paid tribute to deities and historical figures. The most important festival was the Lunar New Year, celebrated over 15 days in the first lunar month. Firecrackers and fireworks were set off to scare away evil spirits and bring good fortune. Families prepared by slaughtering pigs, chickens, and sheep for offerings. One popular tradition was the Holy Pig Contest, where the fattest pig was chosen and sacrificed to the local deity. During the new year, government officials took a week off, and many businesses closed or operated on limited hours. People hung chicken and sheepskins outside their homes as offerings, burned incense, and drank a special ale called Killing Ghosts and Reviving Souls, believed to protect against sickness caused by spirits. The Lantern Festival concluded the New Year celebrations on the 15th day. It was a time to admire the full moon and light lanterns, which were floated on water or displayed in elaborate setups. Wealthy families often competed to create the most impressive lantern displays. Emperor Ruozong, for example, had a 200-foot lantern wheel with 50,000 oil cups, which illuminated the night like a blooming tree. Other festivals had their own unique significance. The Lustration Festival, held in the third lunar month, involved drinking and feasting to drive away evil spirits. The Qingming Festival in April was a time to honor ancestors by visiting their graves. The Dragon Boat Festival in July commemorated a loyal statesman who chose death over dishonor. The Hungry Ghosts Festival in August acknowledged the spiritual world and remembered those who had passed away. The seventh night of the seventh moon celebrated love and craftsmanship, while the Mid-Autumn Festival honored the moon's beauty and abundance. The year ended with the last day of the 12th moon, a celebration to send Zao Shen, the kitchen god, on his journey to report to the heavens. Families held feasts, lit fireworks, and drank the protective ale. Festivals were more than just joyous gatherings. They preserved traditions, reinforced cultural values, and connected people to their shared history. Many of these ancient celebrations continue to be observed today, keeping the rich heritage of Chinese culture alive.